Sonic is like a roller coaster. That is a phrase that I'm sure has been thrown around for quite some time now. As we're closing in on 35 years of the series, it's hard not to reflect on how much the franchise has fallen and risen back up. For every 2006, there's a 2011. For every one of those, there's a 2014. However, since the first film debuted, Sonic has been on a path to greater things never thought possible in recent years. And I'd argue this is one of the best times to be a fan since the 90s and early 2000s. While I'm not set on the idea that things will be better for eternity, this is Sega we're talking about, I'm very willing to place my faith in Sonic Team that they can cook up another great mainline game. And that's kind of what this video is meant to be. Today, I'll be looking over the current latest mainline title, Shadow Generations, and the even more recent Sonic Racing Crossworlds to see how well they hold up and stack up against past entries. So without further ado, let's rewind that clock and start our engines into this retrospective. Shadow Generations is one of the best Sonic games I've ever played. I know I'm jumping ahead quite a lot by saying that, but I don't think I need to hide it anymore. It's been almost a full year since its release, and every time I boot it up, I always have a ball with this game. And it's definitely one of the best deals out there. I mean, a remaster of the original Generations bundled with a follow-up that's just as good, if not better? That's a steal in my book. And since I've brought that up, I won't be talking about the remaster of Sonic Generations as I have very little to say about it other than the fact that it's a solid port. So the first half of this video will mainly be about Shadow's side of the story, and speaking of, let's get right into it. Shadow, while on a mission sent by Gun to investigate the space colony Ark, encounters an old enemy from his past. Black Doom has made a return, and now, thanks to the damage caused by the Time Eater, he vows to use this as an opportunity to revitalize his army with Shadow as a new vessel for him. As he would, Shadow swears to sever that connection between him and his warlord dad for good this time, thanks to some motivation from long-lost friends, which sets the story of Shadow Generations quite well. Much like Frontiers, the plot is very straightforward, but it's elevated by character moments and this time, the set pieces. It hadn't been 2 years since Frontiers at the time, and a new caliber has been set for cutscenes. While the amazing CGI is still not present, the in-game engine stuff has been solidified to be more than good enough. The movement is fluid, the effects are sharp, it all feels so cinematic. Shout out to the Sonic and Shadow battle that occurs near the end of the game. I love that scene. It's all just a level of polish we hadn't seen since Unleashed, and while it could be attributed to the game's smaller scale, I have little doubt that will stop future entries from looking as cathartic as this, which we'll be seeing later. What ties it all together is the almost tightly written moments between Shadow, Maria, and Gerald. All the moments shared between them are so bittersweet, and it makes me wish there was more time for these, as that's the biggest knock I have against it. While what we have is great, I just wish there was more of it because this story could really benefit a lot from it, as quite a bit of Shadow's arc is rushed. Like when Shadow gets angry and Maria tells him, hey, stop that. While I normally complain about that, the sensation I feel for more is enough for me to say that I was enjoying what I was seeing. It isn't perfect, but it is one hell of a celebration for Shadow as a character. Now, on to the real nitty-gritty aspect of this video. How well does Shadow Generations hold up a year later? The game retains the structure of Generations, but a lot of the mechanics are from Frontiers. You're still exploring white space, finding several levels divided by eras, eventually clearing challenge acts to find a key to go fight a boss. Lather, rinse, repeat. However, the means of traversal is vastly different to Sonic's side. There, it was basically just a glorified interactive menu, but here, it's a full mini hub world with several activities to partake in outside of the main quest. The designers took great care into incorporating various elements of white space from Sonic Generations, and adapting that into a 3D space. I'll talk more about white space later, but for now, if we're to start somewhere proper, I think there's no better place to start than to discuss Shadow's handling. Frontiers had set a new standard by designing Sonic's controls to adapt better to a more open space, but when it came to linear stages in cyberspace, it was a stark contrast to the smoothness that came to exploring the islands, maybe even a little worse than Forces. Shadow Generations, on the other hand, has fine-tuned the controls to almost near perfection. The actions you can perform are the same as always, but man does it feel good. Platforming is more than manageable, flying down the levels at high speeds is flawless, and dealing with enemies is back to being as easy as ever, finally. They took what worked and stripped it from what didn't, while also making improvements that I didn't even know I needed until now. The quick step is no longer relegated to 3 lanes like in the previous entries, Now you can just manually have Shadow slide as far as he needs. The original move was fine on its own, but does get predictable after a while. Now you have to reevaluate and judge how far Shadow needs to go to fly through obstacles just right. There's also other changes like Shadow's homing attack operating more like a teleport. There's not much difference from an input perspective, but it can be visually neat as Shadow teleports through gates and lasers to strike his enemies. There's still more to Shadow's moveset, which I'll discuss in a bit, but I do need to address a consistent problem that's plagued recent games, and that's Shadow's aerial movement. Unfortunately, despite his ground game being so good, when in the air, it has to be some of the worst I've seen control-wise in any Sonic game. Once again, you lose a ton of speed from jumping, and the air boost is a far cry from its glory days. Frontiers had this too, but they eventually patched it out thanks to various updates. But Shadow Gens does not have this luxury. With how limp both feel, it can kind of put a nasty damper on the speed. I can get by with it as the levels do accommodate for this restriction, but that doesn't change the fact that it's still a strain on Shadow. However, it doesn't have to end this way, as there's a particular trick that can serve as a band-aid fix. Spear gliding. One of Shadow's primary new abilities is Chaos Spear. Its main purpose is stunning enemies and hitting switches, but if you spam them in mid-air, Shadow, for some unexplained reason, retains his airborne momentum, and you can reach stupidly long distances with this maneuver. I'm obviously smooth-brained, so I can't do what others can, and I can see why this isn't ideal. It's too much to compensate for an action that was better previously, but personally, I'd say it does the job. Since I've already let the cat out of the bag on the existence of Chaos Spear, the main thing that separates Shadow from Sonic is his Chaos and Doom power. You start the adventure with Chaos Spear as well as perhaps the most vital tool in his kit, Chaos Control. By destroying enemies, you'll fill up this meter at the bottom of the screen. Once this is full, you can activate Chaos Control and temporarily freeze time on top of a full boost gauge recharge. Not only are enemies and hazards frozen, the timer also momentarily stops with it. So there's already one good reason to get as much use of it as you can, but then that's also where the management comes into play. The game has plenty of sections where Chaos Control is vital to making certain sections more safe or access a hidden route, saving even more time. Like these missiles in Space Colony Arc, where if you save up your energy, you can safely stay on the missiles and get a shortcut in both acts. Or in Sunset Heights Act 1, you'll see this conspicuous little tunnel high up to the right. Well, by using Chaos Control, you'll reveal a hidden enemy that you can launch and find an item capsule that gives you another full recharge. That's the kind of level design and strategy more Sonic games could benefit from. It opens up a lot more opportunity for clearing levels. It isn't just dependent on high-speed reflexes, but also mindful usage of your abilities. All of these stages put that to the test, and I haven't begun talking about those yet. Shadow Generations does not fail to leave a first impression, and it all starts with Space Colony Arc. I mean, why wouldn't it? This is the birthplace of Shadow and the climax of Adventure 2. The acts are a combination of various renditions and gimmicks from the various Arc levels across the years. The remix comes from Final Rush, the gravity panels from Crazy Gadget make an appearance, and the spinning tubes from Final Chase appear in Act 2. Despite being the tutorial levels, they give the player enough freedom to take a shot at higher skill level play. The shortcut rail in the first 10 seconds of Act 1, the rail atop the tunnel, the rocket platforms frozen via Chaos Control I just mentioned. All this is a taste for what's to come, and even more. Around the end of Act 2, you'll temporarily be given the Doom Wings as your first glance of Shadow's new abilities. These powers were one of the big selling points during the pre-release, and for good reason. These don't just help him differentiate him from Sonic, they give Shadow a unique playstyle. After the arc is cleared, Shadow is given his first new ability, Doom Spears. These are an extension of Chaos Spear, increasing the amount of targets he can shoot at. Rail Canyon is where you'll get your first chance to test them out. Speaking of, this is Shadow's second stage, and much like the arc, there's plenty of opportunities to use Chaos Control, tons of branching pathways, and clever secrets. However, this level is a bit held back by the fact it's mainly rail grinding. Sonic Team just has this new problem where they can't put more than one obstacle on a rail in the entire stage, and since Shadow has Chaos Control, he can make min speed of other obstacles like the trains in no time. I didn't mention this when talking about the arc, but this stage and the ladder also have these radical highway sections that occur midway through the stage. The Doom's Eye will appear and throw Shadow here, and generally speaking, these areas have more style over substance. Like, don't get me wrong, the presentation is going mad crazy, but when actually playing these, a bit of trauma from Forces comes back, but there's a difference between the two. In fact, why don't I compare Luminous Forest from Forces and Rail Canyon Act 1 from Shadow Gens? Both are mainly on autopilot and have moments of hellish automation, but what separates them is the amount of input needed from the player. In the former, the level is mainly just a minute and a half of holding the boost button as you mow down everything in your path. There is a tiny platforming section, but that can be skipped over very easily. Now, Rail Canyon is mainly rail grinding, however you have more to do than hold a win button. You gotta conserve chaos control energy for the right times, switch rails at the right time, stun enemies with a Doom Spear. It may not be mind-blowing design, but it offers more interactivity than holding one button. While being the worst Act 1, the second act does pick up the pace. Now at first, this level may seem more of the same since it's mainly on rails, but there is one saving grace this has that Act 1 doesn't. I didn't cover this when talking about aerial momentum, but there's actually a second method you can use to reach farther distances, especially on rails. For some ungodly reason, if you let go of the analog stick, you jump farther. Why is this the case? I have absolutely no clue, but it does transform Rail Canyon Act 2 into a literal beast of a level. You'll be reaching speeds you haven't seen since Sonic Generations. It's actually insane. It went from a level that I thought was okay at first, but turned into something really fun to speedrun. Taking a break from the main stages, we've reached a point where it's time to fight against a boss. Before you can access it, however, there are challenges you need to play in order to nab all the keys to access the boss gate, much like Sonic Generations. These were pretty hit or miss in the original. Sometimes you get good ones, other times it's digging up treasure with Knuckles. Because Shadow Generations has less characters and white space to go around with, they basically trimmed the fat and designed more bite-sized mini-stages for him. Some do return from Sonic's side, like the Orange Hoop Challenge, specific platform challenges. You can even get the time bonus items from that game too. However, there are a fair share of acts to take advantage of Shadow's capabilities, like Chaos Control Master, Chaos Sphere Master, and the other Doom abilities too. To be honest, I found Shadow's selection of challenge acts to be more interesting than Sonic simply because there isn't really anyone that I'd consider bad. However, a major downside to Shadow's version is that you are required to play all of them. In Sonic Gens, you only needed to play 3 in order to get the keys as either classic or modern Sonic. But here, you must play every act in order to unlock the boss gate. The only reason for this being the case is really just for padding out the runtime, but it's also annoying in the sense that the challenges already have a reason for you to replay them. You can find these collection keys scattered throughout the challenges and the main stages. Yellow is for songs, blue is for artwork, and green is for story intel on Shadow exclusive to the main stages. You can find color-coded chests all around whitespace to give you the corresponding goodies, and they function a lot like the ones in Sonic Generations. But once all is said and done, it's time to fight the first boss of the game, and who else but the Bio-Lizard from Sonic Adventure 2. It starts out very similar to the original fight, but it won't take long before it uses new strategies against you, to which you can counter with your own. It's not a very difficult battle, but it doesn't let down with the cinematics, and the pace of the fight is not at all slow. Not much else to say really, it's just a decent first boss. Heading straight into the modern era is where we get our next Doom power, the Doom Surf. Upon coming in contact with a body of water, a demonic manta ray will appear underneath Shadow and he can glide across the water and use the shoulder buttons to quick step. This is one of the first instances of a traversal power-up, and we'll be seeing more of those as we go along. But for now, let's talk about the best levels in the game, bar none, Kingdom Valley. What a transformation. Sega keeps on proving that they could have done 06 justice with these remade levels, and I admire their confidence in recreating them. Act 1 and 2 are some of the best stages Shadow Generations has to offer. It's one of the longest levels in the game, there's tons of speed, little to no dull moments, and some of the most genius shortcuts and secrets we've seen up to this point. Every element is paid tribute to in these 2 acts. The interior of the castles from Silver's story, the water sections from Shadow's, and of course, the Mach Speed section from Sonic's. Just a wonderful set of levels. The hype train is still going as next we have another big redemption in the form of Sunset Heights from Sonic Forces. While this may seem a bit strange from a lore perspective, it makes enough sense for this to be here as Shadow had his own version of the stage. Regardless, the glow up this level got is probably more insane than Kingdom Valley. In the original game, it played itself for most of the runtime before cutting to a decent 2D segment, and after 20 seconds of that, it just abruptly ends with no fanfare. Sunset Heights and Shadow Generations, on the other hand, takes that and tells us that this is really from the team who brought us Colors and Generations. While being one of the more linear stages in the game, it pays decent homage to the original and improves upon a lot of it. One of the best shortcuts is midway through the outside section, where a Death Egg robot is launching debris at you, and by using Chaos Control, you can freeze the pieces and homing attack them to reach a higher, faster path. Now that is satisfying exploration. Midway through, you even explored the sewer section that classic Sonic and the Avatar did with its own selection of decent shortcuts. Unfortunately, after that's over with, you're met with another radical highway segment, and it's a bit worse than before. While the first half has decent platforming, the rest of it is just boosting down a hallway with nothing enticing happening. And then it's over. We were this close to a full redemption, and of course this asshole had to ruin it. Thankfully though, Act 2 more than makes up for the loss by being, in my opinion, the best 2D act in the game. Now on to the boss of this area, Metal Overlord from Sonic Heroes. This is definitely my favorite boss fight of the four because of how much control you have over him. The fight takes place on water with Shadow chasing him down in the first phase. Since you can't homing attack him, you'll have to knock debris at him with the slide maneuver, a technique which you learned in one of the challenges. While debris don't deal a ton of damage, there's trick ramps that when landed perfectly can launch Shadow at Overlord, dealing a decent chunk of damage. And you want to deal a lot of damage or you'll be stuck under the threat of Metal Overlord's attacks. This strategy is kept up in Phase 2 as you have to knock as many missiles back at him as you can before he tosses a large chunk at you. When destroyed, one might just knock the pieces back, but if you save Chaos Control and freeze the falling debris, you can end the fight right then and there. And once all the pieces are in place, that S rank is yours to claim, as this is one of the tougher ones, at least when it comes to boss fights. Once Metal Overlord is scrapped is the point in the game in which things take a weird turn. But before we can get to that, the next Doom power that is unlocked is Doom Morph, and well, actually this one kinda sucks at first. They don't give a good explanation as to how the ability works, which is already bad enough on its own, but then when you have to look up a guide to see how it works, that's where I draw the line. And that's where Chaos Island comes into the fray, also known as, Sunset Heights was a bit of an oddball, but it made some sense considering Shadow was there, but Chaos Island doesn't have that excuse going for it, so what's going on here? I mean, the answer is probably just that they had the assets ready to go and were running out of time, but it does raise an eyebrow, especially since this is here and not a Shadow 05 level. And the lack of knowledge on how Doom Morph works also can knock it down a peg on a first playthrough. However, when you finally learn the ins and outs of the form, this stage transforms into your oyster. All of a sudden, you're flying over parts of the stage and taking advantage of that at any interval you get. You really get to understand Act 1 a lot more with the better understanding of the mechanics at play here. Now Act 2 on the other hand, this is a perfect candidate for the worst level in the game. It's not bad, but it's the most uninteresting to play, and it's one of the shorter ones. And it relies on Morph even more than Act 1, and the applications in 2D are much more restrictive. Normally this would be where we move on to another stage, but there's only one this time around and we just got to the boss fight. And we have yet another winner. Yep, Mephiles is back, baby! The setup for this encounter is fantastic. It's underneath the plateau and the atmosphere really nestles in the idea that this is a place that doesn't belong. And they play into that with the interaction Shadow has with Mephiles. While the fight heavily revolves around Doom Morph, it's the least intrusive. It's kind of fun being able to pummel a boss your size with Doom Blast and then giving him a taste of his own medicine with Doom Morph. They even paid homage to his beast form and clones in the final phase. While not the strongest boss to fight, it definitely carries a ton of weight in setup and intrigue. We're almost home free now as we have the endgame to talk about, and as I've been saying since the beginning, it is not let down one bit. For the most part. I've mentioned it before, but there is no real level from Shadow 05 in Shadow Generations. You'd think they'd be saving that for the last level, like using the Black Comet, but no. Instead we get Radical Highway again! While there is a good contextual story reason around the overuse of the location, it doesn't change the fact that it is overused. Thankfully, however, the quality of both acts more than make up for it, at least on repeat playthroughs. On your first run, you'll be primarily using the last unlock, Doom Wings. This is your super form equivalent. At 50 rings, you can activate the form where Shadow is completely invulnerable and can temporarily fly. While a really cool unlock, it does sort of undermine the last two levels, which is why I'm glad there's an option where you can play and rank yourself without them. This is where you can see the full ins and outs of Radical Highway and has some of the best spear glide skips, shortcuts, and secrets. Definitely give these a shot without the wings. It's really fun to get an S rank like this, as this is one of the hardest ones to obtain. Once all is said and done, it's time for the final encounter against Devil Doom. Much like Metal Overlord, the pace of this fight is at your hands and skill. Doom utilizes everything that the previous bosses have used against you, and it's up to you to halt being left in his wrath. Utilizing the trick ramps for that extra damage in the first phase, flying over platforms to reach him in the second with Doom Morph, All these are satisfying to accomplish as you fight against your fate, and once that remix of All Hail Shadow kicks in the final phase, you know victory is yours. While an incredibly easy final boss, the moment is what sells the fight. Shadow fully overcoming his past and leaving it all behind after one final duel with his space dad in the location that housed the peak of his vengeance will never not be fantastic. And the game closes on a bittersweet note as Shadow says goodbye to Maria and Gerald for good, sad that they're gone, but willing to fight on because of Maria's wish, marking the end of Shadow Generations. There's still a lot of stuff I haven't mentioned, like other unlockables, white spaces, mini challenges, hard mode variants of those, and bosses, but I think my thoughts on the main campaign were more than enough. I know most of this review was reiterating the same statements over and over again, but how else can I put it? Shadow Generations from top to bottom does almost everything right and then some. It doesn't just offer an experience as good as the original Sonic Generations, it also continues to improve upon what came before. The story carries a lot of weight, the levels are tightly designed, the bosses are great fights, and there's all sorts of other content to keep you coming back. There's even a full DLC level based on the third Sonic film with Keanu Reeves voicing Shadow. If that isn't one hell of an achievement in the series, I don't know what is. I think Sonic Team has something good going here. If they take what worked about Shadow Gens and mixed it in with an improved take on the open zone formula and made something original out of it, we might just have one of the best Sonic games on our hands. That's what I think really needs to happen. Move away from the old ideas and instead strive for something new and fresh. But I guess only time will tell what comes of the next Sonic game. However, this isn't the end, as while we're still waiting to see what that next game becomes, we've just recently been gifted a new release that does more than just hold us off. It gives us another return to form. Sonic Racing Crossworlds is interesting for me to review because I've never covered something other than platformers, so this will definitely be an interesting experience outside of the game itself. But how did we get to this point? Sonic racing games have been around since the dawn of the series' time, with the Drift series on the Game Gear and Sonic R on Sega Saturn. However, one of the more well-known titles in this genre was the Riders trilogy, taking Sonic and making a slick, modernized racing game out of the world he lives in. The first one on GameCube and PS2 was one of the most complex mascot kart racers out there, and it gave itself a much more unique identity, while others ended up just usually copying Mario Kart. However, as the trilogy went on, the mechanics started to dwindle with Zero Gravity and then murdered on sight by Freeriders. With that game and ZG's failure, Sega decided to just give up. Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing was essentially the replacement for Riders, and it did fairly well with the original and its sequel Transformed. By the time Boom came out, however, the racing games were put on hold until 2019 with Team Sonic Racing. People don't like this one. While definitely a competent kart racer, it undeniably took several steps back for the worse, and Sega didn't help by making it dead on arrival because of the lack of any support. Afterwards, all was right with the world, and nothing was coming of the racing series. Until it was. With no hesitation during the Game Awards last year, Sega shadow dropped a teaser for a new Sonic racing title named Sonic Racing Crossworlds. This was right after Shadow Generations and Sonic 3, so there was a huge wave of hype for this one. As more previews and info started to drop, it became apparent that Sega really wanted to use this game as an opportunity to make up for the last entry. They brought back almost everything from the past 20 years. The transforming vehicles, reintroducing fan favorite characters from yesteryear, the extreme gear, items old and new, and of course, the return of characters beyond the Sonic series. It was all building up to a grand return. I even partook in the late betas, and the open network test was what sold me on this game. I had everything to be excited about Crossworlds, and now the game has finally arrived. I will be looking at the Switch 1 version, just a heads up, so apologies for only being able to play the crusty ass version. Crossworlds opens up with a first in the franchise. We finally have a CGI opening again. It's been how long and we just got back to this point? Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Moving on into the menus is where the meat and potatoes lie. I do like the presentation. It really feels like it's a part of a live modern racing event with a bit of live service game elements thrown in. On the side, we can choose our characters, select and customize our vehicles, view players, or extras. Heading into the offline mode is where we can dabble in the Grand Prix, time trials, or race park mode. The former two just being your everyday kart racer modes, and race park is essentially the versus mode with custom races and the like. Starting in the Grand Prix is where we can also choose our soulmate. Since I don't have the DLC, we're only going to be focusing on the base roster. Everybody from Team Sonic Racing is back, but now we got some returning and new faces on top of them. The biggest return is obviously the Babylon Rogues, Jet, Wave, and Storm. Excluding mobile and the Olympic Games series, this is the first time we've seen them all together since Free Riders, and they're still the same lovable jerks from before. And hey, Wave is one of my unironic mains. I love this character. She can break it down, and that sassy wave she does when passing others is what my ego needs. But now for some newcomers. Cream finally makes a return from Free Riders as a fully playable racer again instead of whatever was going on in Team Sonic Racing. Speaking of questionable choices that game made, the real Team Chaotix is back as Charmy and Espio are now characters of their own. And this is probably their latest playable appearance since, like, Heroes. Sage from Frontiers is also here, and I couldn't think of a better option for a real newcomer. She reminds me a lot of Rosalina from Mario Kart, and I like Rosalina, so Sage is a win in my book. And of course, who could forget the most important Sonic character, the Egg Pawn? This is the same situation as the playable cow from Mario Kart World. It's funny, I like it. Lastly, our final character is oh, for f***'s sake. Why does Sega love the Deadly Six so much? Even after Lost World ended, they still had a huge knack for bringing them back, and I just want to know what the purpose is. Well, if I can't find the answer, I guess the only thing I can do is find the answer to what's next after the character. Customization returns from TSR with some alterations to iron out the system. You still buy parts, decals, and other doodads with the in-game currency to modify the vehicle to your liking. However, characters are not locked to a specific cart anymore. You can give them whatever you feel like. Have a speed type and a power type vehicle, have handling with boost, that kind of stuff. Technique type seemingly got the boot, and in its place we got acceleration, handling, and the all-new boost for the extreme gear. All vehicles play the same, and I'm personally fine with that. I know there's a handful of people out there who wish that the extreme gear kept some of its riders' properties, but I think that would just create an uneven playing field. Imagine having to go into pit stops, keep an air meter in check, and land tricks right while the other 4 types have none of those restrictions. God. Lastly, there's the gadgets. These can add special effects to your movement like faster tricks and drifts, enhanced stats, or give you an edge with certain items. My go-to blade is Quick Recovery, trust me you'll need it, Air Trick Expert for faster tricks, and Power Tuner 2 for a bit more power. These enhancements serve to improve your effectiveness on the track, and you unlock more gadgets and slots on your plate through continuous play. While on the subject, I think it's best to talk about how it feels firstly. The first few hours of this game is going to be a bit of a learning curve, as you may have to fine-tune some of the options to your liking, and it may take a minute to get used to the handling, especially turning. But after playing it for quite some time, I can confidently say that Crossworlds hands well past that. Drifting, using items, tricks, all felt natural. If there is one thing I genuinely don't like about the controls, it would be that you cannot fail landing tricks. It's not even an extreme gear quirk, it's present for all vehicles, I checked. Landing the trick is part of the satisfaction. To see it not be a viable punishment is a bit annoying to me. At least tricks don't shift you left and right anymore, like what the f was that? Once our poison has been selected, it's time to begin, and we got a healthy amount of Grand Prix. Hopping into a race. It's Sonic Racing again. Crossworlds is traditional Sonic Racing, but with a twist. After one lap, you'll be transported to a whole new course for a duration of the race before returning back to reality for the final lap. Now, at its core, nothing fundamentally changes about the races. However, this does serve as a way of shaking it up a little. Once you begin approaching the starting line again, 2 portals will appear and you're presented with either accepting a selected crossroad or a randomizer. The person in the lead is typically the one who gets to choose the outcome. However, there is also a possibility that the 2 options are wagered, which I believe triggers if too many people are up front. Another event that can happen is a frenzy, where certain things like more boosters, infinite boosts, and faster drifting will play out for the duration. Once the choice has been made, for the rest of lap 2, it will be spent here in the 15 Crossworlds specific courses, or potentially a lap of another main course. The former is mainly just straight shots to an exit instead of a complete circuit, but they don't grow as irritating as quick as you'd expect. Especially since these are where the more exciting set pieces are located, like Galactic Parade, Cyberspace, and White Cave, just to name a few. These again aren't also your only choices. You can get a whole ass circuit from somewhere further in or back in the roster. The amount of courses is around the same as Team Sonic Racing, but the variety is far larger this time around. There's not one repeated course theme in here, and for the once in a lifetime, they actually have started making original aesthetics that isn't a clone of an existing level. While these can't be fully compared to a proper mainline title area, I think these can serve as blueprints for stages and worlds like this one we see here. Some of them can blend in a bit, like some days they keep confusing Colorful Mall with Wonder Museum, the former already kind of just being Coconut Mall at home. However, there are a lot of great ones like Water Palace, Rainbow Garden, Aqua Forest, and definitely Eggman Expo. And the locales they do pull back from also have a ton of variation. Some we haven't seen in a while, like the countries from Unleashed, Kronos Island from Frontiers, North Star Island from Superstars, and Metal Harbor from SA2. Playing the Grand Prix is how you're going to get the most out of the courses offline, and if you played any Mario Kart or Sonic Racing game prior, then you know the rules. Rack up the most amount of points by getting first in the 4 races, bam, next in line. Although, don't get confused and think there's only 3 when selecting one, there are still 4. The final race is instead just playing the previous courses again per lap. This really does just come off more as padding. Yeah, it retains the main gimmick, but I'm still just playing a lap of 3 races I already did, one of them being 2 seconds ago. Your reward for winning is once again currency, the Donpa tickets, and I'd actually argue it's handled better here than in Team Sonic Racing. In TSR, you'd earn mod pods the same way, however you can't buy parts that you want. You instead have to gamble for them. Now, this wouldn't be a problem if items and legendary parts weren't a thing. With the former, it's just something you probably have stocks of at that point, and legendary parts are just ugly golden versions of existing parts that add nothing special. I think being able to buy what you need is more intuitive than hoping the game gives you it. And you can spend it on more than just parts. In the Grand Prix, you can use them as a retry in case you come close to failing, and there's also the Friendships mode. Here you can donate a certain amount of tickets to earn customization items based on that character, like titles as well as these AI costumes. Their last few titles require an obnoxious amount of tickets though. Thankfully, there's plenty of ways to score a ton of Donpa tickets. Whether it's huge payouts from online festivals, passing milestones, or scoring a huge bounty off of rivals. This is another feature the Grand Prix introduces. When starting up a cup, a random rival will be chosen from the roster. These are the main opponents you want to watch out for as they're the ones constantly on your tail. And they can be speedy little f***s on higher difficulties. Before the first race begins, you get a special interaction with them, which can range from friendly banter to...
So, Eggman had a kid, huh? I can't believe I'm asking this, but would you want to have a play date with Charmy?
My mental acuity so far surpasses your own that I doubt you can perceive how stupid that question sounds.
It's fascinating to see Sonic Team put a ton of effort into something like this, but this just goes for most of the game. Despite being on ancient hardware, the Switch 1 version is surprisingly playable. The performance is shockingly decent with little to no slowdown or lag, even during the early beta testing. Although, I am scared to play this in handheld or with more people. Exploring the remaining modes is where we'll find the Race Park and Time Trials. Race Park is where the versus elements are housed with some single player and online aspects thrown in. There's also rivals to race here, this time as AI clones of the characters on their respective teams. There's 6 special modes to partake in and 1 dedicated to the standard versus matches. Half of them have you partake in random teams with tap boost and ring grab conditions. You can only have the option to select 2 or 3 teams, but I'd actually say these are better than what Team Sonic Racing offered. In hindsight, I don't think making a feature that has been a staple in other kart racers a selling point was the greatest idea, especially since its implementation ended up being pretty inconsequential anyway. Crossworlds adds more to the teamwork aspect by ensuring you have more of a part to play. It's still simple tasks like grabbing rings or getting the most hits in on the enemy teams. That contributes to filling the boost gauge. And even if you end up slipping behind, you might still be able to clutch up with a bonus point by the end. Sometimes. Beating rivals not only scores you more tickets, but also car parts to experiment with. Beat them all twice and you can unlock a special car for a special character. Ladies and gentlemen, Super Sonic is back. He's only available to play as in the Grand Prix, but he's basically just God mode because he can't take any damage from items. It makes the process of beating max level rivals a little bit easier. Lastly, before moving on to online, there are the time trials, and damn, these can be pretty hard. It's the same song and dance as any other, but going for that S rank is actually ridiculous. I didn't even maintain a single one. And Market Street, f*** you. I got close to some S ranks, but not one was obtained at both speeds. And you have to do both main tracks and the other 15 Crossworlds twice. Either way, by completing the time trials, you can unlock more songs for the jukebox that you can play during races. As amazing as the feature is, I can't help but feel that some parts are missing. Like, really? No Black Knight or Sonic R music? And where the hell is the rest of Zero Gravity's soundtrack? Don't get me wrong, there are still good ones here like the Titan theme, Sonic Boom, and Solaris Phase 2. But the exclusions are still very odd. Actually, on the topic of music, I do enjoy the regular OST well enough. I'd probably have to give most of the songs an isolated listen though, because with how loud the game can be, I could barely hear the music over.
Good night, Jim!
It's like I never left ZX Advent. The final major mode is online, and I've had a near flawless time with it. I didn't spend much time on it when recording footage for this video, but I'm sure by the time it gets out, I'll be higher up on the podium. I don't have people to do friend matches with yet, but I'm pretty sure the connection will be just fine, and I know you can make custom races with that. Recently, there has been the emergence of the festival modes. These are events dedicated to the crossover characters like Hatsune Miku and eventually Minecraft. You partake in team matches with random folks with 3 specific conditions that are interchanged every 30 minutes. These are pretty fun, and you do get high-yielding rewards like titles and vehicle customization, but after you cross the main milestone, the rewards become nothing but the maximum output of tickets. This can be an easy way to gather hundreds of them, but you'll have to pray luck is on your side and hope to God you can win those races that have the double point up for first place. If not, then, you know. I do wish you could return to world matches during festivals though, because they're disabled until the event is over, and I know some people aren't very fond of exclusively partaking in team races. I mean, I personally can get by with them, however it's after 4 consecutive third places and when I grow impatient. Nonetheless, if I haven't made myself clear, I love this title, and I've almost put 100 hours into this game at the time of writing this. Another hallmark in Sonic's library, and one I can recommend to everyone at the right price. Now, Switch 1 copies are only $60, but on other consoles they expect a premium for this game, and I don't agree with that, especially when throwing the digital deluxe into the mix. I don't think any kart racer titles should go over $60 because they're not like other experiences. They're fun multiplayer mayhem you enjoy with friends and family, not a 20+ hour single player adventure. But knowing Sega, I no doubt we'll be seeing a sale around the holidays or Black Friday, so if you're still on the edge of this game, then I'd say wait for the time that comes. But you better buy it then, damn it. But at the end of the day, this is the position Sonic is at now, and I couldn't be more satisfied. And the momentum definitely isn't stopping either, with how Crossworlds is beginning continuous support with DLC featuring big name franchises like Minecraft, SpongeBob, and yes, Mega Man. I was so damn excited to see him back, and he's not alone. I look forward to the day when he releases and what comes next of the series. If that ends up being Frontiers 2, which is most likely what we're going to get, I hope we can get a fully realized open world with the quality and tension both of these titles received. And with how well Sonic is done these days, I don't remain that doubtful anymore. But that's all I have for today, so I thank you all for watching, have yourselves a fantastic night, and take care.